of this story that made the rounds about a 15-year-old boy who is on death row, and he has appealed to the Borno State governor for quick execution because he's being prosecuted by prison guards.
Yeah, it's in the news, yes, and it's shocking that what he's actually pleading, for is either a clemency, that is pardon, or quick execution. So it's either you have mercy, as we say,
Yeah,
or
just kill me.
because of what is going through. I mean, he made I think it was in the post, an interview of some sort that was published or posted on social media. So this we're going to be talking about issues surrounding, this post and this statement by the child in question. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So just a little story. He was sentenced to death by hanging at the age of 14 after he was reportedly lured into a get-rich-quick scheme through kidnapping for ransom that led to the death of the hostage. And he's the youngest inmate in the facility, and he's on death row awaiting execution along with 81 other men and 2 women, according to reports. And, he used that medium to appeal to the governor he said he wholeheartedly agrees that he committed the crime, but he's pleading for leniency because he's the only child of a single parent, and also, like we said earlier, because the prison guards are
his word prostitute.
Yes, prostituting him,
yes.
And it's just so bad.
Yes,
yeah, but we're going to be having a conversation today. We're going to be talking about who a child is and if a child can be tried for felony or be sentenced to death. But let's start with understanding who a child is.
Yes, there. So far, there are several laws that talks about the age of a minor, and when a person attains the age of a majority. But for the purpose of the discussion, or the Child's Right Act is what we'll reference, because it talks about when a person attains the age of majority, the language employed by the act. So it says that a person attains the age of majority when that person attains the age of 18 years. So by that provision, it would mean that a child, according to the Child Rights Act, would be any person, below the age of 18 years. So that means the person that is yet to attain, the age of majority, which is the age of 18 years. And why I said that we will rely mostly on the Child Rights Act is because legislations prior to the emergence of the Child Rights Act would talk about young person and child, pegging it at different ages.
Okay.
Yes. So, for instance, in the north, it would talk about when to, which we are coming to that. We're coming to that part in the discussion, but to talk about 17 years, and then of course in the southwest and the west to talk about 18 years. So it differs. At some points too, you hear 12 years about when a person can have can have the criminal intention. They will say below 12 years cannot have criminal intention, and all of that. So that's why I said it's not. If we were to consider all of the laws, we won't be able to, arrive at a conclusion. But by the Child's Right Act, which we'll use as the yardstick, it's when a person attains, is below the age of majority, which is below the age of 18 years.
Okay, so can a child be tried for a felony?
Well, ordinarily, a child, by that definition, is presumed to be innocent. is presumed not innocent, but presumed not to have, the criminal mind. It is the law, presumes that a child would not have a criminal intention. However, the exceptions, the exceptions to this presumption, because first, if it can be established, that the child actually, knows the consequences of their action, in the sense that there are some persons that are below this age,
18.
but that are very, that they how would I put it now, that they're very intelligent, in the sense that they would know that, oh, this is a crime. If the prosecution is able to establish that this person, even though is below the age of 17, but knows, whether upon interrogation or investigation, they're able to confirm that this person actually knows that what he or she committed is a crime. Yes, then another situation is if the person is charged, if the child is charged along with adults for the commission of a crime. So in that instance, part is looked at, the child is looked at, in that group, so to speak, as persons who have the criminal intention to commit the crime that's been committed. So first, if it is shown that the child actually knows that what he or she has done is a crime and understands, the consequences, and also if it's charged along with, with adults.
Yes. Like I think in this case, there are, some adults that were charged along with him.
Well, I think in the report it said that he's on the death row alongside with. So I'm not very sure. It's not clear, from that report if what he was charged with, which will also come up in the conversation. If he can be convicted and sentenced to death, because that is a different thing to convict, for a child
for a
capital offense. Because in this case, kidnapping is actually a capital offense, it's a felony. So, and what we're talking about is whether a child can be tried for a felony. So it is a different thing to try and convict a child, for a felony, and to sentence a child to death, So there are two different things.
So let's even talk about sentencing a child to death. Yes, can a child be sentenced to death?
It will also depend.
On what?
Yes. So it will depend on the crime that the child is charged, for. I'll give you an example. In 3 cases that can, that can come to my mind right now, the court reached 2 different conclusions. 2 different conclusions. First is the Orisakwe against the state case. The Supreme Court, in that case, actually, held that the child, can be convicted because of the provision of the criminal code and criminal procedural law applicable in the East, because it's a case that happened in the East. So the court applied the provision of the criminal procedural law. In that case, it was an issue of it was a sexual crime. So, and according to the criminal procedural law, it said that a child cannot be criminally responsible, for certain offenses. But when it came to the issue of sexual offenses of this particular nature that he was charged with in the case, he said that a person below the age of 12, by the time of conviction, the court then interpreted what the law said about conviction and reached the conclusion that at the time, the age that the court will look at is the age of that child at the time of conclusion. Conviction. Yes. And that, unfortunately for this person, at the time of conviction, it was around 14 years. But 12 years was what the law said. So, in that case, the court said, yes, but of course you can tell that the circumstance. So, if he were to have been below the age of 12, he would not, have been convicted. So, in that's why I said it would differ if the court would apply the circumstances. Then there's the case of Simon and States, which is what is important why I said it depends on the law. Because in this Orisa against state, it was the law of the state that was interpreted. But in Simon and State, it was the Robbery and Firearms Act that was interpreted.
Okay.
Now, it now got to the point of conviction, right? Well, this is a Court of Appeal decision. It got to the point of conviction. Now, the Court of Appeal was caught, in the middle of, the administration of criminal justice law that said that you cannot convict a child, so you can't impose a death sentence on a child because that provision actually is in the administration of criminal justice law. And also the provision of the Robbery and Firearms Act that said that the death sentence is mandatory, for offenses relating to robbery, and firearms and unlawful possession of, firearms, or robbery with firearms rather. So the case, the court in interpreting that provision then said that if the Simon here had been charged under the law of the state that the court was reviewing, it would have applied that principle that you cannot sentence a child to death. But in this case, where it's charged with an act of the federal government, which is the Robbery and Firearms Act, that the penalty there is a strict penalty. It said shall. It uses the mandatory sentence, and usually when the law imposes a mandatory sentence, the court does not have jurisdiction to change it. Okay. So that's the unfortunate case of Simon in that case. So you will see that it is not, and then let me just talk about the last one, which is Barnabas against the state.
Okay.
In that one, the Court of Appeal actually substituted, because it was not charged on the federal law, it was charged on the state law.
Okay.
The Court of Appeal then considered the state law and then the punishment, and then said, the trial court ought not to have imposed a death sentence. The court then changed the sentence from death to life imprisonment.
Interesting.
Which is, so that's why I said it is not a one size fits all principle. So it would depend on the circumstance. So I would be right to say yes, you can you can sentence a child to death in some circumstances. But generally, by the provision of the criminal procedural laws and the administration of criminal justice laws, you cannot. Special reference to Lagos State, Section 203 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of Lagos State actually says that a person below the age of 18 years cannot be sentenced to death. But he can be detained till the pleasure of the governor. And what that would mean is left to interpretation. So, but it is not a strict jacket rule. I think that's the conclusion.
Okay, thank you so much for breaking that down. Before we go ahead, let's just go to a quick break. When we come back, the conversation will continue right here on Law 101. Don't go anywhere.
The 101 will be right back. Don't touch that dial.
And discover what you can do right now.
All the youths in Nigeria, let me assure you that no matter what you are going through, the future is bright. You are the future. You have the power to create the future. Don't let anybody use you as gangster or thug or violent political followers. Just stay within the law. And by the grace of God, Nigeria will be better. I'm Olufemi Pedro, and you are listening to Law FM 103.9 for knowledge and entertainment.
Babe, you know that event I told you about? What are we wearing? I want matching outfits, something fab. And you remember that the dress code is Adire?
I have you covered now.
If it's Tunji, forget about it. It's Adire that has washed. Can you even wear that thing? Where is it safe?
That's true. Where can we find quality Adire?
Having trouble looking for what to wear at the next event? Call us. Adire Supreme Fabrics. Buy original and ready-to-wear Adire fabrics. We only sell quality, and guess what? They are locally produced. The real thing. Adire Fabrics, t-shirts and souvenirs at pocket-friendly prices. Contact us today via Instagram at Adire Supreme, ADIRESUPREME, or WhatsApp 08033282209.
My baby, how are you? I notice your mood has not been right. What's the problem?
Baby, you won't believe that the goods I ordered online for 6 weeks now, I still not received them.
Tell me you are joking, babe.
Of course not. And the funny thing is, they don't reply my messages on their online page anymore. They don't even pick my calls. But no problem. I know what to do. I'll report their page. I'll report them to other bloggers and also do a video to blast them. They don't know who they are dealing with.
Wifey, you don't need all this stress. I tell you for free. If anybody's trying to cheat you, trying to snatch or claim what belongs to you, all you need to do is just take the matter to Law FM People's Court. They will help you table your matter.
Really?
Yes, so Law FM People's Court. You never hear them. But the new thing will happen for town be that if you be say you and your landlord get mad, or your neighbor they follow you one because if you say you don't get person they follow you drag something, or them serve you hot breakfast with touch your spirit. Carry the matter go Law FM People's Court. Them go help you hold the person, put eye for the matter. As it dey hot, oh yeah, call 0809 777 1039. Now, make them help you put eye for the matter.
It's crazy, it's fun, it's witty, it's interactive. It's a full course meal in one package. It's the evening cruise on radio where we take off from Onimoto to Law FM Sports in charge of Bill, and the cruise ends with telling life stories. Yes! It's the Master Planner, the Ambassador and Studio Council on radio 4 to 9 p.m. weekdays on Law FM 103.9. Your only station for knowledge and entertainment.
This is Law 101 on Law FM 103.9.
Alright, welcome back. It's still tuned in to Law FM 103.9, your station for knowledge and entertainment. This is still Law 101. On the show today, we have been speaking with Mr. Adeyinka Adegbite, and we've been understanding who a child is, if a child can be tried for a felony, and if a child can be sentenced to death off the backdrop of, this story that made the rounds of a 15 or 14-year-old boy that was sentenced to death in Borno State, and has been making an appeal to the governor for leniency or to just execute him faster because he's being prostituted in the prison by prison guards. Yeah, so before we went on the break, we just talked about if a child can be sentenced to death, and he said, depends on the law.
Exactly, the law that has been, the child is charged, under, and also the circumstance, which because the law can say a person below the age of 12 should not be sentenced to death for so if first you look at what the law says and then consider the circumstance of the child in the application of the law, so that's what will determine if
a child can be sentenced to death. Right.
We've reviewed it.
Yes. Yes, we have. All right, let's go on to talk about juvenile homes now.
Yes. Well, juvenile homes are their remand homes for child offenders.
Okay.
So usually when a child is tried, because I said of course a child can be tried. When a child is tried and then sentenced, usually they are detained. They are referred to remand home because they're supposed to be rehabilitated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's quickly go to the phone lines. Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good afternoon. What's your name, please? I didn't get that. Can you say that again? Okay. Alright, if you have questions or you want to make contributions, you can call us up 0703 227 or 0909 555 1039. So, are juvenile homes different from prisons?
Well, prisons are also, custodial institutions.
Okay.
So, prisons, but usually prisons are for adult offenders. Yeah, prisons, but now they are referred to as correctional facilities or centers. So yes, but they are reserved for adult offenders, and the reason is that a young person or a child can still be, how do I put it now? They can still be worked on. Let me use that word in order to introduce them back to society, because of the presumption that they have, their mind is still innocent, but there are some offenses, like we said, that they will be tried for, but at the same time they are not being condemned. You understand? So usually they refer to remand homes where they may be released back to society. And you know that, of course, for prisons as well, it's more like the same thing. But because of the fact that those in prisons are usually, they're older, they are, and some might be, by virtue of the experiences and all of that, they are likely to influence a child that is charged for an offense or convicted. It's still, so it's better to, I think that's the idea behind the rationale behind separating adult offenders from child offenders. Yes.
Okay, interesting. So can a convict be tried with another offense while serving a custodial sentence?
This is very interesting, and I think that question is important because, for instance, from the scenario that we're discussing, is the child is complaining about being abused. Yes. So, and it is a crime. Sexual abuse of a child is a crime. So let's say, for instance, a person that has been convicted is responsible for this abuse. The question would then be, can someone that is already serving a sentence be? Well, yes. Why? Yes, is that the principle against double jeopardy in law, which means that a person cannot be tried again for an offense that he has been tried and convicted. So in this case, it will be a different offense because the person, it's different situation. The reason why that person, I'm assuming that the offender is in the same prison. So the person is in prison for a different offense, obviously. But now is sexually abusing a child. That's a different offense. So it doesn't matter that the person is in prison. The person can still be charged.
What if the person what if the offender now was charged for a sexual offense?
Sure. But now the question is, the victim is not the same person.
Okay, yes, that makes sense.
Yes. Exactly. So here it's a different circumstance. So if it was someone else, now it's this person. It's different victims, and that is why it will be considered along with the peculiarity of the charge.
Okay. All right. So in light of this news, what are your recommendations?
Yes. I think it's important to recognize that a child is a child, and also let me state that the provision of the Child's Rights Act actually it prescribes that a special correctional center should be established for child offenders, and also a special correctional centers for children that are likely, because they are, I don't want to use the word hardened, or children that their case is different in a way that they may influence children that are kept in correctional centers. So there's supposed to be two categories of correctional centers for children: the regular correctional center where you have children convicted or for simpler offenses, misdemeanors, and then children convicted of these serious felonies. So that the other part is the special correctional offenses, which I feel that children like this could be kept, because it is not a deal. This person is still a child, still a child as a matter of fact. So it should not, ordinarily, should not be kept in the same prison as adults.
Yeah. Okay. So, would you like to add anything in conclusion before we go?
Well, I think all I'll say is that it's important, even as a child, as an adult, to be law abiding. There are consequences for actions. I mean, the plea that he's making about the deceased parents and all of that, it doesn't, because once you've violated the law, there are consequences. I mean, these are things that you could have thought about before you committed the offense. I mean, but anyway, I think the lesson is just for us to know that there are consequences for actions, for violations of the law. The law has set out punishment. So, except the governor would, exercise power to pardon, and in the case otherwise, the justification or the plea, about the parents and all of that may not amount to anything.
I agree with you. Yeah, just like you said, I mean, it's important for people to be law abiding and also understand that, there are consequences to actions. So it's not when you finally do something and then you are charged and sentenced, you have to say, oh, sorry, this is why, you should think about that before you do whatever it is. Yeah. All right. We do have to join the questions on the show right now. Thank you so much, Mr. Adeyinka Adegbite, for coming on the show and having this conversation with us. It was definitely an insightful conversation, and we always look forward to having you on the show, so please do come back again.
Thank you.
Alrighty, keep it locked on to your station for knowledge and entertainment. Some music coming your way all the way to 4 p.m. and at 4, Paulo, the master planner, will be here on Unimoto. Alright, so don't go anywhere. We have a lineup of programs for your listening pleasure all the way to 9 p.m. Alright, so keep it locked on. This is your station for knowledge and entertainment. This is Law FM 103.9.
FM 103.9. Connect to your dial. Rich with knowledge and entertainment. 103.9. Your FM. This is Your FM Radio. 103.9. For knowledge and entertainment. 103.9. Your FM.
If you think this song about your girl, then it is what it is, and if I really run now, I know he sees. It is what it is, me realize, they should legalize. If you feel wine, then I realize, I feel look wise, no they follow lies, but we no go die. We the big boys, and we outside, treat me like ice, and we outside, and like I must shine, and they must wine, when she go down, look like spice. She like to party late, I don't castigate, I just facilitate, I voice activate, congratulate, I life appreciate, it take a happy debate, take a back to me place, we start to funny, the legs start to be shit, phone start to vibrate, a boyfriend is suspect, a day assassinate, a things come over later, more. Me realize, they should legalize, if you feel wine, then I realize, I feel look wise, no they follow lies, but we no go die, we the big boys, and we outside, treat me like ice, and we outside, the nigga must shine, kill them must wine, when she go down, like spice. All them pull up and play back again, all them pull up and you play back again, all them pull up and you play back again, see them that turn up the big tune. Me realize, they should legalize. If you feel wine, then I realize, I feel look wise, no they follow lies.